Hello, gorgeous people, and welcome to another TV Central one-on-one podcast. I'm Aaron Ryan. This is episode number 42, 2023. In Limbo is a bold new series joining the ABC Wednesday lineup from the 24th of May. The six-part series tells the story of best friends Charlie, played by Ryan Corr, and Nate, played by Bob Morley, as they're faced with how hard it is to let go of those we love, especially when they're taken too soon. Bob Morley is an Australian-born international star with credits including The 100, Home and Away, The Blinder, and more recently, Love Me. Now he can add the character of Nate from In Limbo to that list. Bob Morley, thank you for joining me at TV Central.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
So many things to talk about, but let's start with In Limbo. It's part of the ABC Wednesday comedy night, but it teeters on the border of being a drama and being a comedy. For me, but perhaps because I could relate to it so much, I had more tears than laughs, but I guess like the Ricky Gervais show Afterlife, it will connect with people on a different level. Would you describe the tone of the show as more leaning towards a comedy or drama?
Yeah, I would say it falls more in that dramedy area. What time of Wednesday night are we showing though? You know, it's like we're not the first comedy off the in the evening. So
No, you
yeah,
can't knock off Tom Gleeson and Hard Quiz.
yeah, exactly. So you know, where the ABC will ease you in with the comedy, and we'll slowly get to more of the dramedy. But yeah, it is quite a moving show with funny bit moments in it. As kind of playing Nate, who, for all intents and purposes is a, ghost in quotations. A lot of my stuff is working with Ryan Corr. So when I got to watch the show, I didn't really get to work with all the other cast. So I got to see what the show as a whole and the broader picture. Like I read the scripts that after watching the show, it's really quite moving. And yeah, there's some really beautiful performances in there. And I think Emma Harvey has done an incredible job, as well as Ryan, balancing the two worlds that he's kind of living in as well. Nate is in limbo, but Charlie is there just as much in a respect. So yeah, there's definitely the drama, and then there's the comedy, and sometimes they meet, but yeah, I think it's all part of telling a larger message and raising awareness in that way.
Well, you've touched on it, but let's set the scene. If you could tell the audience what the basic premise of In Limbo is.
Well, In Limbo is, Nate and Charlie are best friends, and Nate kind of has kept some things to himself, and then we lose him too soon in a rather tragic way, and Charlie's kind of left there to pick up the pieces and figure out how to move forward without his best friend. So we're on a journey with Charlie and Nate's family to see how they process their grief and how each person goes through that. And Nate, who is stuck in limbo, appears every now and then to kind of hinder things or help things along. He's almost like this annoying best friend that just won't go away. So in that regard, therein lies the comedy. But yeah, to a larger extent, it talks to mental health conditions and having that courage and strength to talk and to share the troubles that you may be going through, and having that courage to be vulnerable with those that you love. I think there's a larger message there, and hopefully that resonates with the audience, and that kind of moves them forward toward having those more complex and sometimes difficult conversations. But yeah, that's how I interpreted the show.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot in there about losing somebody. I mean, sometimes they don't have to die. It can be part of separation. And losing someone on that level. I mean, your character Nate does take his own life. I'm wondering. I mean, this has been reported. Did it hit home a little? I mean, in 2019, you spoke out surrounding the stigma and shame of suicide by sharing your own mental health issues. And admitting you had multiple suicide attempts. Was playing Nate a little eerie because it really shows that if you had been successful, the pain that is left for those around you. As Nate did have a partner, a child, and a best friend.
Yeah, I mean, There were difficult scenes to shoot, and some that were, Bunya had really approached the subject matter with sensitivity, and we did speak to therapists, and we had, support around us. And I felt very safe with Ryan and sharing, and especially when some things might feel outside of my comfort zone and whatnot. But in terms of it, being something of my own lived experience, it was a show that I felt really important to be part of. I felt very strongly about that. And Lucas Taylor had written an amazingly articulate script about that and what goes on. And I think he had a real understanding of it. And I think it was just something that I really wanted to be part of the conversation and moving that conversation forward and bringing that to light. I think that's why, well, it's definitely why I spoke out about my own experiences a few years back, because look, it's a really hard and harrowing thing to live through and to live with on a daily basis. And only when I started sharing, it was terrifying. And it was also really hard for those who love me and my loved ones to hear that that's something that I would have to, try and cope.
Yeah.
But once I started sharing and that dialogue began, and everyone started to understand that, it's something that it's compounded by the isolation. If I'm not sharing it, it gets even worse. So that was one of the major reasons I spoke out about it, or, spoke publicly about it. And it's one of the driving factors to me being part of this show. And there were times in the show where, I'd come home, my family was in Los Angeles, and I was there in Brisbane, lovely place, but, very much feeling alone and, but having to kind of keep myself in check. So that was definitely challenging in a lot of ways. And, even when I was viewing it with my wife, it was quite hard for us to sit through that stuff and, work through it. So, it was terrifying to do, and watching the show and even talking about it now, I'm like sweating, like I have a little bit of fear and insecurity about it all and everything like that. But I think those things that terrify you are sometimes the right thing to do, and to kind of push into that uncomfortable zone. I'm really proud of the show, and I hope it finds an audience, and I hope it's received in the way that we hope it to be. And it was approached with respect and sensitivity, and everyone, every crew member as well had been affected by a mental health condition in some capacity in their life, and we were all there wanting to tell the same story. And so it felt like a very supportive community and a great place to be able to tell that story. And hopefully, it resonates with an audience out there.
I think your bravery to talk about this really made an impact and show that these kind of thoughts are not linked to where you live or how successful your career is or how much money you have or how many people admire you. I mean, every person on every level are connected on issues such as loss and grief and separation and connection, amongst others. Did you feel a sense of hope after sharing your story with others and then feeling that connection back from people that either had struggled mentally or were struggling at the time? And were inspired by your words?
Yeah, no, it's definitely like, I've been lucky enough to go to like conventions like Comic-Con and other ones around the world where I get to meet fans and spend some time with them. And it has been one of the resounding things that has come back and how it has helped them. And it's a really beautiful thing to share and to feel like, you're helping others take a step in the right direction or helping them cope. Like it was, the response was lovely and absolutely supportive. And that's a wonderful thing. But I think it's when those who are struggling at that time come up to you and have the courage to share their story with you. Like there have been times where I've been at conventions and people have come up to me and I can see that they are struggling, but they're willing to push through that to tell me their story And that's like real bravery and that's real courage. And I'm just floored by that every time. It feels like such a weighty subject. And, like sometimes I have to get whisked away to do other things, but like I'm so appreciative of them sharing and
Yeah.
stepping up and having that courage to do it. So, yeah, it's a lovely thing to do. And if I have the platform to do it, and especially on In Limbo, then I will.
Well, let's get back to In Limbo. Ryan Corr's portrayal of Charlie is so poignant because on the surface he continues that banter with Nate. He is quite frustrated and even tells him to go away a number of times. Some of the actions are clearly a front because you can see the unimaginable hurt he's feeling from Nate taking his own life. Tell me how you see Charlie's perspective in what has happened.
Yeah, look, I think Charlie, this is kind of an interesting place to live as an actor as well. Like, where does Nate actually exist? Is he an ethereal being, or is he a part of Charlie's own psyche? What does Nate know, and what does Charlie know? And are they two separate entities? And it got into a whole labyrinth of things. So we're just like, let's just do it on the page. But yeah, I think for Charlie, Nate is part of his grieving process. I don't think, like, I know when I've lost someone in my life, and like even right now I'm grieving. No, I was going to make, like, my son who's 14 months old is now starting to only do one nap a day. I missed that second nap that we used to have. That's a joke. Put that aside. But look, I think Charlie's reaction and having Nate around is a normal one. Like, you still talk to people who you've lost and you still wonder what they would do, or have like asked for guidance, or reminisce about a time when they made you laugh. I think that that's part of how Charlie's trying to work through stuff. And I think, after getting to watch the full season, yeah, I think Ryan's performance is so well grounded, but also heightened when it needs to be, in terms of when he's having that banter with Nate. And I think there's a real authenticity to the way that it's portrayed, and that also comes from the writing. And I think it's truthful. Like, you do, when you lose someone, you still imagine what it would be like, like you said, like even in a separation or whatnot, or you imagine what they're like. Right now my dogs are in Australia and I'm here in LA, and I still talk to them and imagine them sleeping on the bed, because it gives me comfort. I think it's part of his grieving process.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, you have mentioned this, but is there something important to learn or capture from within the series? What do you hope the audience takes away holistically from the show?
Well, I think the show, it touches on mental health conditions and everything like that, but it doesn't tie it up with a bow. Like, Nate says quite often, there's no simple answers, and that's kind of the truth of it. Like, what I'm hoping that people take away from the show is that doorway to begin to have that conversation. I think In Limbo uses humor to open that door to having those trickier conversations. And I hope that by the end, if you're an audience member, you think about someone you love and one of your dear friends and go, you know what, I'm just going to reach out and see if they're okay, because the thought of actually losing you from my life is not worth me not asking you how you are today. And then that conversation starts. I think that's it's important for us to, say, that g'day mate, how you doing stuff, but the conversation needs to continue. I think that we've come to a point where we can all ask whether a friend's doing okay. What we now need to learn for each other is how to continue that dialogue without it getting to that sticking point, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Where it becomes uncomfortable. I think a lot of us are equipped to say, hey, are you doing okay? My friend might say, no, I'm actually not. I'm really struggling with this. But then where does that conversation go from there? Because if you just kind of punt them to say, oh, go get help, then that isolation comes back. It's about opening up a dialogue that's a back and forth. And I think it's important that we all learn how to have those conversations, because, mental health conditions just seem to be rising, and we're all, I feel like anxiety, whether it's a buzzword or not, it feels like it's definitely here. And especially like things are moving so fast, we all feel like we have to be doing something every moment of the day. And so to be able to slow down and kind of at a base level, see how checking in on friends and reassuring them that what they're feeling is, it's fine to have these feelings on this particular day or X, Y, and Z. And to have a conversation that goes past, are you doing okay? Are you okay, mate? So then continuing that conversation. I know that's a long-winded answer to what you asked, but
no, it's important. Are you being quite prescriptive in the roles you take now, or is it just a coincidence that some of the roles lately have had just so much depth, realness, and are challenging for you as an actor, but also for the audience to watch? I mean, In Limbo and Love Me are compelling, moving, and I would even say important for people to watch because of what is drawn out as a viewer. So have you been prescriptive, or is it just a coincidence you just had these roles come up?
I mean, I think I've just been really lucky. Like, I mean, obviously these roles are fantastic. These shows and productions have been great. And I think they're the roles that I've always wanted to do. I think there's this misconception with actors that it's like we can pick and choose. Like, it's really kind of, there are certainly things that I won't go out for, but there is a lot more that I go out for, and I think only the elite class can kind of pick and choose what they do, whereas I'm definitely not in that echelon of performer or, market value or however the algorithm works. I'm not in a position to kind of pick and choose, but these are the roles that really draw me in. These kind of authentic and challenging topics really get me excited. So maybe there's something that in me that kind of fires up a bit more for those auditions and it shows, I guess.
You might be a pick and choose actor after these couple of performances you've done, which have been awesome. But let's talk about one of my top 5 shows of all time, and I genuinely mean this, not just because I'm talking to you. I'm absolutely in love with the series Love Me. I did a podcast with Will Lotter, who plays Aaron in the series. We had a great chat. I'm interested in your reaction when you saw the script, because it's not your average show.
No, I mean, even when I auditioned for it, and the briefing notes were pretty short, but it's like, male model, this, that, and the other. But the dialogue was just so naturalistic that it's like, well, he's a model, but that's not who he is. He's a human being. And then getting to sit down and chat with Emma Freeman for that first season and just kind of having an authentic conversation about how she wants to shoot it and this, that, and the other and what we're looking for was really refreshing. And yeah, especially when we got on set, and Boyana is just such a phenomenal actress. We had some, like, the reference material of I think it's Swedish version. I didn't watch it because I don't like to watch other incantations of characters that I'm going to play. But I think Emma Freeman has a real style about the work that she shoots. So she kind of really set the tone, and from there on out, the show was created. But honestly, in the first read through, when there was Boyana and Heather and Hugo, I was a little bit like, what am I doing here? And like, kind of like, oh my God, just doing my lines and being like, don't stuff it up. And my internet connection was really bad. I was in Los Angeles and they were all in Sydney. So I was like lagging, and then they were like, oh, we lost you there. And I was like, oh, maybe that saved me that I broke up through that read through. But I mean, to me, with Hamish Lewis, one of the executive producers there, I got along with him really well. And in season 1, it was COVID during like the height of Melbourne lockdown. And so it was like we were in a bubble. It was like they were the only people I got to see. So it became a very tight unit very quickly.
There's so many levels of the show we could discuss, but let's talk about sex for a moment. Movies and television often have the magic of sex, the take my breath away music in the background and is always perfect. Love Me shows all the elements of sex, the beautiful, the slightly uncomfortable, and the occasionally awkward moments that people experience. Did you like the authenticity in the storytelling when it came to sex across 3 generations?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a really fantastic intimacy coordinator, and we would talk about love language and how Peter might express himself and how Clara might express herself, and finding those boundaries, and then of where, where we would feel comfortable. So in that regard, there was an amazing set to work on, and it was the first time I've really encountered a intimacy coordinator in my almost 20 years of working. But yeah, watching the show, like I love watching Hugo and Heather as performers, and it's great to see their older generation shining up there on the big screen. I think that it's beautiful to watch. Yeah, but to be honest, I haven't watched any of my sex scenes because it's not necessarily something that I'm into. But yeah.
Well, let's quickly touch on the Hugo Weaving part of that. As a bisexual viewer, I have no issues with yourself and Will naked and in some of the sex scenes. But seeing Hugo Weaving as Glenn Matheson with pants around his ankles and having sex with Anita on the kitchen bench wasn't easy to watch. But I found that so in sync though with what Love Me is. 3 generations being real, and yes, people over 50 do have sex. And in fact, in one way, it was almost beautiful to see people enjoying love and romance later in life. Do you think the show broke a few barriers in terms of ageism and sex?
I think so. I think it did. And I think, like, hats off to Hugo and Heather for doing it and showing that and portraying it. And I think you've kind of nailed it on the head in terms of it being shown in the same regard as the younger generation, that middle generation, which I am now, and then the older generation. It's all love that we're shooting, and it's all going to be shot in the same way and given the same respect and dignity as each generation. It's all different forms of love, but shot with that same way, if that makes sense. It's not like it's
yeah. Well, you're talking about like ageism. You're in the middle now. I mean, some people, when I was interviewing you, said to ask you, have you actually aged? Because you look almost exactly like you did in Home and Away. Yeah, haven't aged at all. Same look. But that's a compliment anyway. How comfortable are you with sex scenes and nudity in television? I mean, you were naked a lot in Love Me. I thought we probably wouldn't see you naked in Limbo, but the bum does come out in the later in the season. Is it just part of the job? Something you get used to, or is it still awkward?
I don't know if you necessarily get used to it. Like it's awkward, and it's kind of you try and be as comfortable with it as you can be, and so you kind of try and be as relaxed as you can be on set and whatnot. And the only time when it gets awkward is when it's called cut and people are like, all right, and they all go back to doing what they're doing. And you're like, can someone get me my gown? And you're like, I'm still standing here like naked, guys. But for me, I think I've gotten better at being naked or whatnot as I've gotten older, and just kind of it's more about my own self-acceptance and my own self-worth. I think my younger self would have been way more self-conscious. Like I did in other movies when I was younger, and you kind of, it's just part of the job. Yeah. But yeah, I don't want it to be something that I do all the time. It definitely needs to be selective. And I think that in Limbo, it served its purpose. I don't necessarily think that I would just do it for the sake of getting naked.
Yeah.
I'm me in everyday life. I'm definitely not that guy. Yeah.
Let's go in a different direction now. I mean, many will know you for your acting credits, but you don't have a bad vocal technique either. I remember you in the singing competition, It Takes Two, where you're raising funds for charity out of the great work the hospital did for your mum who had ovarian cancer years earlier. That looked like a great experience, and there seemed to be a change in you after you visited the hospital. Was that a fond experience? Because it was different for you.
It's definitely different. Like, I was really grateful to be able to give some money back, obviously. But it kind of it came down to a bit of a pragmatic decision, actually, because I was on Home and Away at the time, and Chris Hemsworth had just done Dancing with the Stars, and I can't remember. It might have been Mark Furze had just done It Takes Two, and I was like, look, I was chatting to them, and I was like, I don't really want to be doing Dancing with the Stars. I was like, but I could see how learning how to sing could be quite helpful with like acting.
Yeah.
So that was why I chose to do It Takes Two. And also it meant I got to go back to Melbourne. I think I was really struggling being in Sydney away from family for like the first time. And so getting back to Melbourne. But yeah, that was really nerve-wracking. And I mean, even when you said It Takes Two, there was like a flush through me of like, oh God.
Are you still singing it all, or just at home with the new son?
Yeah, just lullabies, just on repeat, human jukebox of like whatever it is. Row, row, row your boat, twinkle, twinkle, little star. All those things, the girls on the bus, hitting all the notes. He's loving it.
You started your career in Home and Away and Neighbours, and soon after your departure, you made some negative comments about it being a machine that can chew you up and spit you out. Now, you did apologize years later. And look, I understand why you apologize, but I also recognize some of the mental health struggles you had at the time, struggles that would lead to making, sort of uncharacteristic comments like that. The fame thing and the lack of privacy was a real struggle for you at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it has been up until like the last 4 years or so, really. It's not something that, like, to me, I know that it's part of the system of being, especially with social media, doing all like your Instagrams and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it has always been a struggle. And I think, especially, I have my own mental health conditions. It can lead me down a path that isn't necessarily good for my health. And it took me a long time to separate that kind of, especially with social media, that quick hit of dopamine and validation, and understanding that that's not where my sense of self-worth should come from, and then having to separate that stuff. And yeah, you're right. I think for me, when I was on Home and Away, it was the first time that things really got quite tricky for me. Like, I struggled to sleep. Like I wouldn't, there was a period of time where I went from not being on TV to being on TV in people's houses like 4 nights a week. And I remember Ada Nicodemu saying to me, like, after like my first 3 weeks or something, she's like, enjoy your anonymity while you have it. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever. Not really thinking too much about it, but wise words. And I wasn't prepared for it. And, I was 21, which is still pretty young to be away from home and living in a new city. And yeah, there was a period of time where I didn't even leave my house other than go to work for about 3 months, because I was just kind of I was struggling, and it was one of the reasons I departed early from that show. But looking back, like, I have so much to be thankful for at being at Home and Away, and learnt so much from it. But yeah, that was kind of the beginning of a bit of back and forth for me throughout my career about how I approached that and how much value I put in to how you're perceived in the outside world by the external factors, and how I perceive myself, through the way that I feel or my own self-worth. So it's been a long journey. And, I think around that turning point, around 2019, when I did speak up about what I'd been going through, it was really kind of claiming back my own power and talking about my stuff, and not being kind of dictated to through other avenues and trying to look for validation, but rather telling my own truth about what I'd been struggling with, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. I'm interested to know if you find it difficult making connections with people, because although people know it's acting, I guess some people believe in some ways that you are Drew Curtis or Aidan Foster or Bellamy Blake or Peter Kay or Nate. Is it difficult making connections with people on when they I don't know, is it subconsciously think that you are those people?
Um, I don't know. Like I feel like as I've gotten older, and especially since becoming a parent, like my world's gotten a lot smaller. Like I'm not necessarily the most social guy. Um, Not that I'm antisocial. It's just like I kind of, have my close family and friends and, my rock climbing buddies and stuff like that who haven't really seen any of my shows. I think, um, yeah, I think the only real time that I encountered that people were actually mistaking me or thinking that I was Drew Curtis was when I was on Home and Away.
Yeah.
And, especially like, yeah, being a young fella out at bars and stuff like that. And, you know, people thinking I was my character. It was kind of a bit of a shock. But yeah, I haven't encountered it too much. And I don't necessarily struggle to make connections with people. I don't think. But yeah, I don't know.
All right, let's move on to your beautiful wife, Eliza.
Mhm.
You your co-star in the 100. It's a relationship that was obviously high profile. And there's the media, the photos out there, and I'm sure some people feel invested in your relationship, having seen you guys in the 100. I mean, whether you're a celebrity or not, love is a personal and beautiful thing. What
Mhm.
was it and still is about Eliza that makes your heart glow?
I mean, love's one of, like in Love Me, it's a shifting and evolving thing,
Yeah.
and especially since becoming parents, it, just watching her be a mother is an incredible thing. But Eliza has such a capacity for compassion and understanding, and you know, I think in many ways she's one of the reasons that I've been able to begin to manage and cope through a lot of my stuff, and vice versa, just through having honest conversations that it would be difficult. But very early on, the show The 100, we kind of, being both Aussies and it being our first American thing, kind of made a pact to be best friends and to work as a team to make sure we can make it as good as it can be. And kind of that, just from being best friends and being part of a team, it's kind of super integral, especially when you have a
Mm.
child, is to be on the same team. And I'm just really grateful. I think she's the best thing in the world, and she's my best friend. And we're playing Hogwarts Legacy together at the moment. So yeah, good time.
And you mentioned your son. Tell me about him and how has that changed your life?
Yeah, he's awesome. Like, I mean, it's the craziest thing. One of the nicest things, I think. I mean, Henry is he's funny. He's very curious. It's not without its challenges. And that's what any parent would say. There's those sleepless nights and this newfound worry that I just have to learn to live with every day. You worry about everything with him,
Mhm.
but it's overwhelmingly overridden by how much joy he brings into the world. I can't imagine a world without him. Um, and there's beautiful things in him that when I look at him and I see Eliza, and you can see the similarities and things, even things for me, like as a kid, I hated my ears. And then I see that Henry's got them. I'm like, oh, they're actually pretty cute. That's not so bad. You know, and I'll be like, if he hates them, I'll say, I used to feel that way, but it's all right. You're all right. So, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And I think there's so much, I'm doing so much learning. Like it's all so new to us. And that's the thing, especially which taps back to that part of Love and Eliza, is like we're a team and we're doing everything for the first time together and supporting each other through that.
Mm.
Um, so there's this real um, heightened bond that kind of happens with us as parents because of Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's happening in terms of working and location? You're obviously in the US for some time, and I know the family is, but you've been doing quite a bit of work in Australia recently. You've
Hmm.
got your son now. Where do you and Eliza want to ultimately end up?
I think ultimately we'd want to be back in Australia. Like, our parents are there, Henry's cousins are there, our siblings are all there. And I love being back home. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're learning on the trot, like being away for, like, I was away for almost 4, 5, almost 6 months, and that was really challenging. They came over at the end of the year, and now we're back here. So it's not like when we were younger, or even just a married couple, where it's like, all right, you go off there and you do this, and I'll go off here and shoot that, and we'll meet back up. It's like, well, now we have to be selective of what we want to do, and be mindful of each other's, like, dreams about our careers, and work together as a unit. We're learning on the job with that too, and finding out what is manageable for us and what isn't. So it's shifted a lot in terms of career direction and whatnot, but to me, it's really kind of what's best for the family unit. Yeah, you got to weigh up everything.
Yeah, well, in terms of working, I just wanted to ask something about Ryan Corr, because you've both delivered some very similar type roles, in terms of engaging real characters. You guys would be great in an Australian male version of, I don't know, something like Thelma and Louise or something. Have you guys built a friendship and considered doing something together?
I mean, I would love to work with Ryan again, and hopefully, I know that Lucas has more in the tank with In Limbo, so hopefully we get to have another swing at it. But yeah, I mean, he's one of those actors that, and I've said this to him as well, that like I would watch, like I would watch his career and see what he was doing and be internally jealous, be like, oh, he's very good. And so I was really happy to work with him. And then, my wife Eliza worked with him, went on the Sleepover Club, and so
Wow,
she was like, oh yeah, like 20 years ago or whatever. And she was like, you two will get along. And like, Ryan and I only met like 2 weeks before we started shooting In Limbo, but we just got along really well. And I think, yeah, I really appreciate him. And yeah, if we get to do Thelma and Louise, then sure, let's do it.
So what's next for you? Anything you can hint about with future projects?
It's kind of, like like I was saying, now the landscape of like what work I can say yes to has really shifted. Eliza's here working on a project right now, so I'm kind of stay-at-home dad for a bit, and getting used to that new role, and then see once the calendar opens up a bit more and I can be available, then yeah. But it's a real juggle right now, and the writer strikes just started here, and so
yeah,
it's not as exciting as it could be. It's been a really interesting last couple of years with COVID and now the writer strike, and so Australia's really producing some stuff and really kind of looking at projects there at the moment. But yeah, right now I've tried to just put work aside and go, I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad for a while, and look at things for later in the year and maybe next year. But it's good to have a bit of a force majeure, I think, for me, and find my equilibrium before I sail off to somewhere else and we put our life in flux again. So yeah.
It's probably too early for a call on In Limbo season 2 yet, since the first season's not out. But yeah,
exactly.
Have you heard anything about season 3 of Love Me?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've heard that it's been received really well. But yeah, I mean, even season 2 was kind of late, like where I knew whether we were going ahead very late in the day. Like, yeah, like I think I went straight from doing In Limbo to Love Me. Like, it was like, I think I had a day off between the two projects.
Wow.
So yeah, like I was doing In Limbo, and then we were figuring out what dates I could work on Love Me. So I know that the original series, I think, went for 3 seasons. So whether that's something that they envisage at Foxtel and Binge, then that'd be great. But yeah, I can't speak any further to that. But I'd love to kind of play Peter Kay again.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Top 5 show. Look, we're getting to the This is the second last question. We've covered some big stuff today, and I'm so proud that we're in a space where we can openly talk about things like mental health. And of course, there is help out there. Lifeline's number is 13 11 14. Now, you've been through a whirlwind of emotions, some so dark that you attempted to end your own life, to being in a space where you have a beautiful son and the world at your feet. For people out there that are in that sort of darker space right now, and knowing that you've been there, what advice would you give them?
Look, it's one thing that I've always found is that when I'm in that darker place, there's a lot of different therapies that I've taken on, and I take the holistic approach to mental health, but a lot of the times, if you need to cry, that's fine. You should cry. Or if you need to just be in a room on your own, that's absolutely fine too. Like 100% of the time I've gotten up from those dark times, that I'm still here. That's one of the things that I find solace in when I'm in one of those dark times, is that I have 100% record of getting through those darker times.
Yeah.
But it's when the sun's shining and things are good, that's when you need to get help. That's the best time to start working on those darker times, because sometimes you're just hanging on in those darker times. But when you are feeling like you can breathe again, that's when you need to start taking and doing that work, because it will help lessen how dark things can get. I think that's important, because it's very easy to forget about the dark times when things feel a lot better. But that's kind of when we got to do the work. Yeah.
Well, ready for the big last question?
Go on.
To end this podcast, and in the spirit of In Limbo, let's say your son is much, much older, and you've passed away from old age, and your son is speaking of you at your funeral. What do you hope he says? What do you hope you've instilled in your son?
What he says about me?
Yeah, like, and what do you hope you've instilled in your son? Like, what will he say about you?
Look, I hope that I've given him a place where he's felt supported. That I believed in him, and I already do. Like, I have absolute trust in him. That he'll do what's right for him, and I believe in whatever he wants to achieve. So, I think that I hope that he says that there was always an open door. There's always somebody to listen, always someone to help or kick him up the ass when he needed a bit of a kick up the ass, Yeah. And, it's funny. I hope that he thinks that I'm funny, but right now, Mum is queen of comedy. So I don't get any love. So she's a one-woman show. And I just take him for walks, make him breakfast. But yeah, I hope that, and I know that to the best of my ability, I'll be as supportive as I can be of him. So yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Authentic, just like your roles, that's beautiful. Bob, your work in Limbo and recently in Love Me has been authentic, beautiful, and deeply moving. Has given pause for the audience to reflect on things, sometimes good things, and sometimes it brings up hurt, but that can also lead to healing. So I do appreciate your time. Thank you for being so candid, and good luck with In Limbo, and we'll keep following your work. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, take it easy. Look after yourself.
All right. That was Bob Morley, star of the ABC series In Limbo, which starts Wednesday, 24 May 2023 at 9 p.m. And then all episodes will be immediately available to view on iView to binge. That's it for this podcast. For all the latest news, streaming info, ratings, television guides, podcasts, head to tvcentral.com.au. Until next time, thanks to Bob Morley. Bye for now.